for everybody listening, you are worthy of the most beautiful life. And even if you feel that your circumstances right now are not communicating that to you, if they're not reflecting that back to you, your dream is not being reflected back. Trust me when I tell you, you're worthy of it. As long as it's your life that you're living, as long as it's your most authentic essence of being.
Welcome back to the Core Happiness Podcast. I am your host, Casey Banks, a mindset and positive psychology coach. On this podcast, we discuss all things related to creating a happy life from within. And today's guest does just that. Joy Dushey is a transformational life guide, breathwork facilitator, and the creator of Joyful Approach Integrated Life Systems, which is a holistic framework designed to help individuals achieve deep healing, balance, and personal freedom. After surviving a life-altering stroke at 29, Joy embarked on a profound journey of self-discovery, which led her to integrate spiritual, emotional, and physical well-being into her work. It's all-encompassing and so inspiring. So she is here today to help us learn to illuminate the path from darkness to light and how to live with greater joy, authenticity, and freedom. Let's dive in. Joy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor to be with you.
Absolutely. So excited to have you here. I know that as a sought after speaker and a mentor and healer, you have a very unique approach to your work, that you blend modern psychology with ancient wisdoms, and you help people reconnect to their true selves and find their highest potential, which is amazing. But I also want to go back to what started it all, which seemed to be that life-changing, pivotal moment where you had a stroke at 29. Can you go back to that moment and just tell us how that experience shifted your mindset and your approach when it comes to personal well-being?
If I was to really take myself back to where I was going, and I think I'd probably summarize just trying to escape from lots of emotional pain, grief, unprocessed trauma, all of it, where my body just said enough. And what I've learned, I am an empath and, didn't know that back then, someone who really internalizes pain and what other people are feeling and so on such a sensitive level. I realized that my body was just, saying no more. And in that time, it was such a shock to my system. It was really putting myself in this whirlwind of like the world that I knew up until then just was a very dark time for me as well, because I could no longer run from or fill myself with the things that I was just patching up, or filling myself with external things to just soothe or numb the pain, right? The underneath emotional pain, I'd say. And so now I was just sitting there and faced with it. And I know that it was a huge nudge for my soul, my spirit, to ask the question, what is life really about? Where's the deeper meaning? What is not filling you? What is more curious for yourself? And trust in that time, even though I had no idea that there were answers and there were choices that I could make, even though my physical body was in this halt, in this forced rest, and couldn't actually do yet. And that was why I was just able to really sit with those questions, that what is it really all about for me? And I think that was something that is a huge lesson for me till today. Like even now in this moment, fast forward 20 something years later, where we never stop. I realized as a soul being, right? A spiritual being living in a physical body and living in a physical experience, I'd say I am still, always growing and always evolving, I hope, where I'm always faced with that question. If I allow myself to just pause and meet the suffering, meet the uncomfortable, and say,
Yeah.
what is here for me to learn from this experience? So going back to that time in my life, I knew that it's time to live a life with more meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean to me? And that was a gift from the universe, from God,
Mm-hmm.
where I was gifted this trajectory, like a trail of synchronicities. And first it was meeting somebody at the local gym where she started to talk about holistic health. And I became curious about that. And then I mean, it's just such a beautiful journey of, first working with that trainer at the gym who guided me to holistic remedies, then taking a course and learning under the tutorial of Paul Chek, who is one of the greatest pioneers in holistic health, and then actually having him mentor me one-on-one a bit, and then becoming certified. And then, it was just like this gorgeous trajectory and running my first marathon to celebrate my physical body. And so it was just a beautiful journey that woke me up to a whole different world and a way more dimensional life with spiritual living. I mean, it was just, yeah, a rebirth, I'd say.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And I mean, when you talk about being an empath and you talk about just your body saying enough, I want to focus on that a little bit more because I think there's so many people that struggle with that. I mean, whether they're also an empath or maybe they're dealing with stress or fear or grief or self-doubt or something along those lines, they are having to have this moment, or I think they're also having this moment where their bodies or the anxiety, everything just feels like it's shutting down. So when you were going through that difficult time, how did you get through it? And was there something pivotal that inspired your mindset shift to say, you know what, this is enough. Like there's got to be changes.
There were all these little gems and
Mm-hmm.
gifts from the universe, and it could have been a new friend that I met at the gym, that we just connected about on running as overcoming. And I just felt so seen by her. And she
Mm-hmm.
was a new friend that was really became like an auntie to my daughters, and, a family friend. And it was just meeting those beings that were they were awake, and they were also overcoming something or have overcome something, some kind of illness. And those were the people that I started to bring into my little universe, I'd say,
Yes.
where I felt seen and, felt that I was in alignment. We had alignment in what we were sharing, and a more spiritual life. And then it was going and taking some trainings and being in those trainings with other people that were also healers or emerging healers, all those communities of beautiful beings that I got to meet around the world that were so aligned with our mission. And so that was just really the journey. And also then there were therapists that I met, like holistic therapists and spiritual guides along the way as well. And all of them, it was just, it just morphed into like, more and more. And yeah.
I love that because it sounds like, in addition to universal signs, that you were getting people who were just put into your path, like right place, right time. And I think that's so important because when people are struggling with anything, it could be illness, it could be stress, anxiety, anything, we tend to isolate and we tend to go it alone. And one thing I always talk about a lot on this podcast is the power of community and how community is just so important. And it's important to have a support system. And sometimes, in order to change, you also need to change your support system. And in your case, it sounds like even just going to the gym, meeting that person completely opened up a whole new world for you in terms of people. And I know you said that you just really felt seen. And so I'm wondering, did you start to build that support system in other ways? Like, did you go to certain events? Did you lean on the person at the gym and their circle of people? Like, how did you start to build that community for yourself to help inspire and support this growth?
So the first thing that I'd say is it's important to allow. I love the word allow as the operative word, because as long as you allow, the universe will send,
Mm.
and you ask for it and it'll come.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the number one step, I'd say. And I'd also say, I always give advice. I'm a coach as well. And I'd say if somebody was looking to date somebody, someone that's super healthy and somebody that is an athlete, I'd say you're not going to meet your person. You probably won't meet your person at a bar at, 11:30 p.m.,
Right.
right? So sign up for a local race, go to, some um, holistic center where you're going to probably your chances of meeting that person will be higher or greater.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with myself. I immersed myself in, like I said, some trainings that had to do with holistic healing or some spiritual meaning where I was learning, and workshops. And that is how I met some of my dearest friends
Mm-hmm.
that I consider soul family as
Mm-hmm.
well. And it's, one friend, what that person may be connecting me with another person, or vice versa, myself connecting one of those beautiful souls that I met and with others. And I think that's how we build community and we grow community.
Yeah. And it sounds like when you were going through training and you're meeting all of these people that are on the same wavelength as you, is on the same path as you, it sounds like a lot of that inspired the joyful approach to integrated life systems, where you talk about the balance of all aspects of life. So it's not just physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's mental. Can you tell us a little bit more about how these are all connected and why it's so important to address them collectively as a whole?
Absolutely. I wanted to also just circle back to the last question,
Yeah.
and because something that I feel is important, and I also suggest to clients, and this is something that has really helped me, is to also give back by maybe going to a soup kitchen,
Oh,
or we do these events. I'm so grateful. There's a local center near me that we do challah bakes where we come together with women to pray, and and there's also the cooking of, there's where we gather and we cook meals for impoverished people and so on, people that need it. And so there's so much that you can do as far as getting together and helping others with charity events and so on. And you can do some research in your local area as far as that. And there's a lot of healing actually in giving back to others when you're actually going through a hard time.
I'm glad that you went back to make that point because that is incredibly important for people to understand because especially when they're looking for their community, sometimes people get stuck. Or at least in the experience I've had with coaching, they get stuck on, well, I don't know where to go. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. How am I supposed to meet these people? How am I supposed to create the support system? But sometimes it's not always around a hobby. Like you're saying, it could be volunteering, it could be giving back. And then when you go and do those things and you meet new people, you're also healing that part of yourself. And I think that's pretty important because I think anytime that we are in a place of giving where we are being kind and we're being compassionate, I think that that helps understand ourselves also.
Yeah, and the last one, because I was just in the park in Central Park, what I love is working with nature, and there's a lot of healing benefits with, planting and touching the soil, grounding benefits as well. And there are volunteers at the Conservancy for Central Park, and any park that you can volunteer, and it is so beautiful because there was a whole crew of volunteers that were planting today. It's a
Oh,
little warmer outside and it made
yeah.
me so happy. It lit me up. So, yeah. So, okay. Joyful approach and the whole multidimensional system. I love it. So, it was about 20 years ago that I created this life system, an integrative life system. And I have to say that a big chunk of it was taken from what I learned from Paul Chek and his incredible teachings. But then with my own healing and everything that I intuitively brought in and what was working for me is something that I formulated called the Joyful Approach Integrative Life System. And it's a 2-tier life system. And they're all interconnected. All of the pillars and the tenets of the Joyful Approach are all interconnected. So the first tier, the first wheel, has to do with how we live day to day. And it's how we breathe, how we nourish, how we eat and nourish, how we move, how we hydrate, how we sleep, and how we think, our mindset. And a lot of that has to do with being connected to our purpose, to the meaning in our life, and also having positive thoughts and our mindset, knowing our why and living intentionally. So those are the first tier, those components. And then the outer components have to do with more emotional, more about our relationship with ourselves and others, which has to do with daily practice, having boundaries, our core values, knowing our core values and staying rooted to our core values, living intentionally, self-love, living authentically, and daily practice, boundaries. I think I covered them all. Yeah, so they are all a system and they all work together. And it is a multi-dimensional life system that we start very basic, like we start with how we nourish with food, for example. But then we nourish our soul also in other ways, right? For me, it's through nature, through connection with like-minded friends, through giving back. That's how I nourish my soul. And, and then there is also like, for example, with hydration, which has so much to do with how we hydrate our body, how we lubricate our joints, and we have to drink lots of water and so on. But there's also like the minerals and, that we put into our hydration. But there's a lot of healing through waters, and also learning is also a form of hydration. So it starts very like simple, but then we also have the multidimensional components. And so for me, anytime that I feel a little bit off course, I feel out of alignment, I'm always checking in with the life system, with the integrative life system. And it's a checklist. And I literally check, wait, are there any areas that I'm not tending to? Like it could be that my daily practice needs a little tweaking, or I'm not as consistent. Boundaries could be off. That for sure is going to bring you out of alignment. And it's really important that we have healthy boundaries in our life, because if we don't have healthy boundaries, then we're not honoring ourselves. And that usually has to do with not having self-love, right? Honoring ourselves. Then authentic living for me is probably the most important. I mean, it's that they're all so important, but authentic living was exactly about, when I had the stroke, going back to that time, was I really living authentically, or was I living according to other people's ideas around what life should look like, right? And that was when I was like, no, this is my life. I was given the birthright to live Joy's life. This is my life, right? God created us all to live in our unique design. And when we are living according to other people's value systems, when we're not living our own life, that is what causes dis-ease, right? And so it's a whole tapestry.
That's beautiful, because I think I like to always look at the scientific parts of things too. And when we talk about being out of alignment, I think a lot of people just think, oh, I just haven't seen my friends in a while, or I haven't had a moment to myself and I just feel off. But it goes so much deeper than that. I really think it truly goes into energy and the fact that we're all energy. And so when we talk about nourishment, like you're saying, whether it's with water or grounding yourself or self-love, all of those are also forms of energy. And so when we're out of alignment, and like you said, if we're living for other people, which so many of us do, and because we're just trying to keep up the peace, or we don't want to anger anyone, we don't want to disappoint anyone, that takes our vibrational levels so much lower. So we actually energetically become out of alignment as well. And so when we're living in that authentic life and we are being true to ourselves, we actually have a higher vibrational energy. So I love that you talk about that, because everything you're talking about touches on so many different aspects on how we can make sure that we are vibrationally aligned as well.
Exactly. And for me, I love the way you summarized that also and reflected back. I feel that frequency is so important, vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I feel it in such a visceral level. So when we can start becoming more in tune with our energy or the
Mm-hmm.
energy around us, it's actually like the barometer. We can use our body, or we can just tune in
Mm-hmm.
and just check in and feel our own frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can actually realize, oh, it has to do with that frequency that either brought my energy down or brought my energy up. And the more that we surround ourselves in the frequency that feels higher, it feels more in alignment. That's how we live a more high vibe life. And we can make those choices for ourselves. You know what? That seems really nice, but that's not in alignment for me.
Yeah. Can you tell us how you incorporate breath work and vibrational sound healing and other somatic practices into your work?
So, breath work, the three-part breath I'm talking about, it's the alchemical, transformative. There's so many different words that people are using for breath work, rebirthing, But essentially, what that is that we are breathing in an active state, right? We're breathing in a much more active, it's kind of like doing cardio with your breath. You're in a lying down position. And the idea is to get past the conscious mind to pull up all the stored energy that's living in your body, that's tucked in. It lives in the subconscious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we want to move that to free our bodies up, to free our souls up, to let go of all that's holding us back from living our most ideal, more free life. And so that has changed my life radically. The first time that I experienced breath work, it was the most healing. I've experienced many modalities. This was after I was already, working with people, but I was still experiencing some residue of grief and some PTSD and, still things that lived inside of me. But when I did the breath work for the first time, it was this huge catharsis
Mm-hmm.
that I was not prepared for it also. And I really just signed up for it, but I did not know what I was getting myself into. And it was just this cascade of cathartic release. And I literally like just shed layers and layers of years of pain and grief that were just like kind of like tucked in those little areas. So that is why I had to bring it into my practice. I did it for 7 months after weekly, almost weekly. And I saw the just huge benefit in it. And so I offer it as one-on-one sessions, and then I do groups. And I'm not always offering it with the people that come in for healing sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I really am very discerning about what type of healing the person is needing. And then the sound healing, the sound vibrational frequency healing, is where I'm using different instruments that are, since our bodies are made of, 60% plus, give or take, of water, the frequencies of the instruments that I'm using have a resonance with the physiological body and can heal on a cellular level the body, the nervous system as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of tuning a piano and attuning the nervous system, the physiological body as well. And what happens is that the body gets into a deep state of rest where they're also able at that time to get into the dream state of their desires. So there's some manifestation that happens as well. Sometimes it depends on the client or the group and so on. Because when we're in that in between state, when we're in different brainwave states, when we're in like theta, for example, that's a beautiful time to be manifesting beyond the ego that wants to limit us or any kind of limiting beliefs. And when we can visualize our dream, that's such a beautiful time that we're actually it's becoming a reality, right? The
Mm-hmm.
brain doesn't know the difference of what's actually happening or not. And so it's really amazing. Most people, I think almost always, it's like 98% of the clientele or group members always feel super relaxed and much lighter. Sometimes people see colors, they see visions, and so on from those experiences.
Yeah, I will say for me, breath work has been a true game changer in my life. Like once I've actually learned different practices and different breathing techniques, like it truly is a game changer, especially when it comes to managing my anxiety and my stress. So I love it. I also love that you mentioned limiting beliefs because I think that, probably 99% of the population has some form of limiting belief that keeps us from moving forward in some way. So I'm curious, what common limiting beliefs do you come across when coaching people? And how does it hold them back from just achieving joy?
Yes, I think it's so funny. I was thinking about that recently. It's like, I don't know anybody that's not exempt from limiting beliefs
Yep.
because as long as you're a human being,
Hmm.
we have an ego, and the ego is going to just do its thing, no matter how awake, no matter how evolved you are, no matter how devoted you are. So, yeah, I think for me, what I see the most is unworthiness. I see, yeah,
Yeah,
unworthiness. I mean,
it's a
that's
big
like
one.
the big umbrella of, certain shadows that hijack our belief system.
Yeah.
Um, and imposter syndrome, definitely with my entrepreneur, solopreneur clients that are just so excited to do something and to go out there and create a beautiful mission driven entrepreneurship or solopreneurship, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
And then that imposter syndrome like just comes in like a little, I see them as like little parasites, and they're just
Yeah.
like wanting to creep in.
Yeah. And you said the part about the ego, because I feel like a lot of people know what they should do for their well-being or mental health or for healing, but a lot of people just struggle with consistency or just full on self-sabotage. So, what advice would you give to people who are overcoming those internal barriers, like if they're just struggling internally?
So you said it before, like continuity is the most important
Hmm.
when it comes to really holding yourself accountable and being intentional. The work that I give my clients, they have to report back, right? My
Hmm.
clients they have homework to do. They have to track their wins. They have to work with certain mantras and affirmations that I give them.
Mm.
They need to do their daily breathing. They need to, because when you don't do your daily breathing, you're going to default
Mhm.
to the meditation is such an important factor. I know it sounds complicated and it doesn't need to be, because it could really be 5 minutes a day. Obviously, 10 minutes is better. However, we need to keep the frontal lobe in the driver's seat,
Mhm.
right? So that's where I noticed that my clients that are making the most progress, my clients that are seeing the actual progress with their own eyes, they're like, oh my God, this is really working. This is amazing. I can't even believe it in such a short time, are the ones that are keeping up with the tools in continuity, having their rituals and their routines that are setting themselves up for success rather than self sabotage. Every
Mhm.
time that you, for example, if I have a client that is kind of eating crappy and they're wanting to really better themselves in most areas, right? It's not only about the nutrition. However, we do go over the checklist. Like we do say, like, what areas are you not honoring yourself? And just realizing that every time that go and open up the bag of chips, it's like you're literally communicating to yourself, I'm just like, you're not worth it. Like you're not, you know, obviously joyful approach runs on an 80-20 rule. Like we're human, we need to have balance. We don't like a rigid life system. We don't like rigidity at all. We need to be flexible and malleable, right?
Love it.
However, we do need to realize that when you're defaulting too much, that's because you're self-sabotaging and you're just dishonoring yourself.
I love this so much because I think a lot of people can relate. And when we talk about living out of alignment, and before we even talked about societal expectations where we're living to please others and just trying to keep the peace. Maybe it's a mother running around, taking care of everybody but herself. And it's one of those things where it's like, if self-compassion has to go, it's going to be the first thing out the window, right? Because I have to worry about all these other things. And if I have to take something off the list, it's going to be me. It's going to be self-compassion. I'll sacrifice myself. So because of that, and people who are struggling with the expectations or are having a difficult time embracing their true self or even living authentically, what are some signs that somebody is out of alignment? Because I want people listening to this to have maybe that aha moment or understand that, oh, maybe that is a sign that I am living out of alignment. Maybe I do need to focus on more of a joyful approach, or maybe I need to do some internal healing.
Yeah. So I also work with a harmony wheel. I know this sounds like I have a million different tools. So the harmony wheel will look at, it's a big circle, right? It's like the universe. And then it's like a pizza pie. And we're looking at the different components of our life, career, our spiritual connection, romance, partnership, friends, social, health. And we look at that wheel and we use kind of like a graph method where we fill in how complete we are in all those areas. And when we can see that the areas that need the most attention, that have void, right? That's the area that we want to focus on and pay attention. And that helped me tremendously with my own self. Even when I was really, really high achieving in my career, I noticed that there was an area that I was not paying attention to, and I was probably overworking to compensate for how that needed attention. And sometimes it seems like it's obvious, but until we really sit with it and allow ourselves to meet those voids, that's when we can actually pay attention. So a big underlying foundation of my work has to do with self-love and has to do with first starting with the relationship with self. And my work is also vetted in inner child work, because I could be working with somebody for, I'd say we're 3 months in, and where we're not moving forward, most of the time it has to do with the relationship with self. And so we really have to draw back to creating the beautiful inner dialogue within self and that relationship. And it turns out to be the most beautiful. That for me, I think that's where I like get emotional and my eyes start to tear up, because I could witness such a shift in my client where they begin to really honor and love themselves in such a beautiful way. Self-acceptance, I'd say, is the gateway to self-love, like accepting yourself the way you are and not trying to change it, not feeling like, you know what, I can't exist in this world, being my authentic self, being the self that doesn't need, to wear all these costumes and masks that, are hiding the beautiful self that is maybe sometimes messy, sometimes not perfect, and sometimes, doesn't look like the Victoria's Secret model, whatever.
Yeah.
And once we do that, that's where like self-compassion comes in, self-forgiveness. And it's a beautiful, I mean, it is very emotional. So I tell my clients, like, we're going to go really easy for now. And it's very gentle healing. And, it's not about overproductivity at that time. It's not about going for the major goals, but allowing ourselves to be in that space and holding my clients in that ever so tender way while they're going through that, to me, is really the most important, I'd say.
Yeah. And I always say that, like, if you are notice that your level of negative self-talk is increased, that's a sure sign that you're living out of alignment. I think a lot of things start with that. Like, how hard are you on yourself? Are you more compassionate to others than you are to yourself? That could be something. And are you giving yourself care? Giving yourself true time? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be like at a spa or bubble bath type of self-care, but even like you said, things like consuming food. Like, are you actually really thinking about what you're putting into your body? And are you thinking about your movement. So just stuff like that. Very small questions that you can ask yourself pretty much on a daily basis to see if you are living out of alignment or not. And then going back to that fear of disappointing others, because this is kind of where self-love and self-acceptance and living authentically usually get questioned, is I don't want to disappoint other people either. So I want to live authentically, and maybe I do it in small pockets of my life in some places, but overall, I don't want to disappoint anyone or feel like I'm letting anyone down. So in those cases, do you have any advice for overcoming the guilt that people can have when it comes in the choice to honor yourself?
Yeah, I think the people pleaser is pretty much an epidemic at
Mm,
this point,
yeah.
seriously.
Mhm.
And for healers, especially, the first thing is that we need to realize how it is going to impact you if you don't stop, right? Like we need to stop. And this is where boundaries are so important.
Yes.
Healthy boundaries. When you set a boundary, that doesn't mean that you are hurting somebody.
Mhm.
It's the first myth. Like you need to understand that you are not harming somebody by setting a boundary for yourself. On the contrary, what I've learned is that people actually, most people, I mean, this area of conversation is probably geared towards a more conscious audience,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because anybody that's really wanting to grow or work on themselves, I consider them a more conscious, awake person.
Mhm.
So it's really about honoring yourself. And I do feel that people will respect you more. And they're also going to learn from you. Wow, I love how she set that boundary for
Yeah.
herself. That was cool. You know what? Maybe I'll try that on.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you're giving agency to someone else to say, you know what? I don't need to be a martyr. I don't need to just run myself down to the ground and like just, be a doormat. And that is beautiful because there's a way in which you communicate your boundaries. Again, you're not spending too much time with it, like to caretake the other person.
Mhm.
But when we find the right languaging and we find the embodiment, and it doesn't come from anger or resentment, it's beautiful. And then you're like, ooh, so many, I told you, I have my clients tracking their wins. So I have my clients reporting back. I said, no, I didn't go to the party. I decided to leave a little early and da da da. And it's just like beautiful because that just grows this gorgeous garden that begins, that one flower that is blossoming. It's just this beautiful ripple effect because
Mhm.
that felt so good. So they're going to just continue creating those healthy boundaries. It becomes
Yeah.
easier.
I completely agree. How has embracing your own authenticity impacted your life and your relationships and your work, just your overall level of fulfillment?
When I took this big leap to change
Mhm.
and to make choices that were very courageous for myself, it was like coming out of the closet for me. It was really like taking this very bold step to say, this is what I'm up to. And on my platform, I'm going to be talking about real stuff. I'm going to be talking about emotional pain. I'm going to talk about anxiety. At the time, it was just, especially from the world that I come from, it was so not talked about. Like I had to take that chance and say, if I'm just going to live in my own little world with the three people that I know that they'll always love me unconditionally, my family, like that's okay. And
Yeah.
not everybody has to like me, and not everybody's going to be on board. And for me, that was fine because the alternative to that was like, I'm not going to live my life under a rock. Like I am not going to do that. I'm not going to dig myself in a hole and, live a strangled life. So I had to live my truth. I had to.
Yeah.
And what blossomed from that I mean, there are no words. It's been miraculous. It's
Yeah.
been incredible. I'll be on Instagram 10 years come January. And at first, it was very, very scarce as far as like who was on board and who my audience, whoever was looking at my Instagram because of my post about these things I was sharing, these more truthful voices that were coming forward, that people were viewing them. It was resonating with them, but they wouldn't actually like it. And it was okay with me. I didn't care. That wasn't my goal. My goal was to share from my heart with an authentic voice to impact even just one person.
Yeah.
That's how it started.
Yeah.
And so I know that today, obviously things have changed and blossomed. And I'm so grateful. And again, it's like I don't have to be everything for everybody. If it resonates, that's amazing. And I feel really full, but my heart feels full. And if it doesn't, it's okay too.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready, it's okay.
Yeah. Looking back at your own journey, is there one piece of wisdom that you wish you had had earlier?
Mm, that's such a hard question. I know people ask that, and I actually ask, what would you tell your 15-year-old self? What would you tell
Yeah.
your 20-year-old self? I say this a lot, like lately with my friends and family. I do wish I had a closer connection to God back then. I know it would have been a lot easier, even though I felt God in my life, but not as strongly as I do today. I just, that would have been a lot easier. I think it would have been easier for me if I had that back then. But yeah, I think I just had to go through it the way it did, and
Yeah.
I'm here now. So
Yeah. I had a friend say to me once, she's like, you can't have the testimony without the test. And I was like, well, that's a different way of thinking about it. So, yeah. And I know we are close on time, but I just wanted to see if there are any final words of encouragement for those who are just beginning their journey of healing or want to find authenticity in their life or just want to find their voice. Are there any last words of encouragement that you have for them?
I do. I'm speaking to the whole broad audience, right? Which means to me, I don't know where you are. If you're in despair, if you feel like there's no hope or that you're like really, really at such a loss, do trust. As long as you allow, as I said before, allow that little small portal to just take a crack open and take a breath and go outside, go to nature, because nature is where there is life, there is vitality, and connect to something that is living and take a breath and look up and just allow for a possibility, allow for a change. We have free will, and we need to connect to our free will. We need to use our free will. So that's, if I'm speaking to you, I hope that resonates and I hope that helps you. Breathing is the most important out of all, taking some nice deep breaths, making sure to breathe every single day, right? Which means to take a digital detox from time to time, limit your time on social media. Be careful about how much you listen to and balance that time with also listening to your own voices, listening to your own wisdom that's right inside of you. And to connect to that dream and desire that's based on what your soul, what's most meaningful to your soul. So trust me when I tell you, it is possible. It is possible. I've been through some real rock bottoms in my life, real rock bottoms. And, I'm just so grateful because today I get to live the life that as a little girl, I always dreamed of. Not completely, the fairy tale or, but yeah, it's good. It's joyful.
And then we are going to link the Joyful Approach to Integrated Life System just for more information for people who want to know more about the system. Please go check it out. And then all of Joy's contact information will be listed in the show notes. Joy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been so delightful.